Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel Breaking the Barriers. Today's video is second part of chapter Triumph of Surgery from class 10th. I have already uploaded the first part of this chapter. So if you have not seen the first part, I suggest you go and click on that I button and watch the first part. And this second part is in continuation of that part. Where I have left the explanation in the first part, I am going to continue it in the second part. Here we are going to start with page number 5 of our NCRT book with the line by line explanation. So open your NCRT book to page number 5 and let's start with the explanation. So at the end of page number 4, we have seen that Mrs. Pumphrey is sending in some eggs and wine for the dog. And part 5, page number 5 starts. We could hardly believe it when the brandy came to put a final edge on Tricky's constitution. Now, finally, after eggs and wine came the brandy. Brandy is also an alcoholic drink which is consumed to warm your body. Okay, generally people drink it in colder regions. So for a few nights, the fine spirit was rolled around, inhaled, and reverently drunk. But as we all know that these things were not given to Tricky by James Harriet, and that is why, as he enjoyed the eggs and the wine himself, brandy also was consumed by him. In spite of giving it to Tricky, he consumed it himself. Now he is doing this for the benefit of Tricky because he cannot send these things back because he knew Mrs. Pumphrey would feel bad that she is sending all these things for the dog, and in spite of giving it to the dog they are sending it back. So instead of sending back, he is consuming and enjoying these things himself. So he's saying this fine spirit means premium quality brandy was rolled around, means enjoyed, inhaled, and reverently drunk. Very happily they enjoyed this brandy. There were days of deep content, and those days when Tricky was with them for the treatment, those days were they were completely content or satisfied. Why they are satisfied? Because they are consuming eggs, wine, brandy, and enjoying their life. Isn't it a benefit that they are reaping out of Tricky? The day starts well with an extra egg in the morning, improved and sustained by the midday wine, and finished luxuriously around the fire with the brandy. So in the morning they were consuming the eggs which were sent for Tricky, in the afternoon or midday they were consuming the wine, and at night before going to bed they were enjoying the brandy. Generally brandy is enjoyed after dinner time. So it was a temptation to keep Tricky on as a permanent guest. Now they were enjoying so much, these benefits are coming out of Tricky, that they were thinking, let's keep Tricky with us forever. We'll enjoy these things for whole of our life. But I is James Harriet. He said that I knew Mrs. Pumphrey was suffering, and after a fortnight felt compelled to phone and tell her that the little dog had recovered and was awaiting collection. So he said he knew very well that Tricky is with us, and the owner of Tricky, Mrs. Pumphrey, loved dog a lot, and that is why he's saying that I knew that she must be becoming restless over there and she might be suffering because of this dog, and that is why exactly after fortnight, as promised, he called Mrs. Pumphrey and told her that dog is completely fine, he has recovered, and you can come and take him. Within minutes, about 30 feet of gleaming black metal drew up outside the surgery. Surgery, I told you, the clinic, because James Harriet is a veterinary doctor, a doctor of animals, and that is why, as soon as he called, within minutes, big gleaming metal means a long luxurious car arrived at the gate of the surgery. Now we all can guess that who is in this long luxurious car. It is Mrs. Pumphrey. She has arrived to take the dog. The chauffeur opened the door, and I could just make out the figure of Mrs. Pumphrey almost lost in the interior. Chauffeur is a professional driver who wears that white uniform you must have seen in movies and all. So he came out of the car, and from the window of the car, James could completely make out that Mrs. Pumphrey is sitting inside. The outline of Mrs. Pumphrey was visible. Her hands were tightly clasped in front of her. She was sitting like this, hands clasped in front of her, and her lips were trembling, and with trembling lips she said, "Oh, Mr. Harriet, do tell me the truth. Is he really better?" And she asked, "Please, Mr. Harriet, tell me the truth. Is he better?" And Mr. Harriet said, "Yes, he's fine. There's no need for you to get out of the car. I'll go and fetch him." So he said, "You stay inside the car. I'm going to fetch him and I will bring him here only." I walked through the house into the garden. Now Mrs. Pumphrey is waiting inside the car, and James Harriet came inside the house and went to the garden to find Tricky. A mass of dogs, means large number of dogs, was hurtling round and round the lawn. Hurtling means brisk, quick movements somewhere. So these dogs were running and playing and enjoying themselves in the garden. This was their playtime. And in the midst of them, matlab in between them, unke beech mein, ears flapping, ears of the dog flapping, tail waving, was this little golden figure. Golden because the fur color of Tricky was golden. The little golden figure of Tricky was there, means he was also playing between the dogs. In 2 weeks, he has been transformed into a lith. Lith means slim and fit body. So in 2 weeks, he has transformed himself into a slim and beautiful dog, hard muscled animal, muscular. He was keeping up well with the pack, means he was not behind the pack means group of dogs. As the pack was energetic, Tricky was also equally energetic. Okay, stretching out in great bounds. You know how dogs stretch. So Tricky was also trying to stretch himself, and when he stretched himself, his chest almost brushed the ground. Means his chest part was touching the ground when he was trying to stretch. You have seen now when dogs sleep and they wake up, how they stretch their body to relax. So when the Tricky was stretching, his chest was touching the ground, completely fit and fine. I, again, I everywhere, wherever I is used, this is James Harriet. It is in first person context of James Harriet. I carried him back along the passage to the front of the house. The chauffeur was still holding the car door open. The chauffeur was holding the car door open, and inside the car, Mrs. Pumphrey was sitting, as you can see in this image on page number 5. The chauffeur was holding the car door open, and when Tricky saw his mistress, now we come to the last page. When Tricky saw his mistress, he took off from my arms in a tremendous leap and sailed into Mrs. Pumphrey's lap. So narrator was bringing, or James Harriet was bringing Tricky in his lap, and he was bringing, and as soon as they reached near the car and Tricky saw Mrs. Pumphrey, Tricky jumped off from the lap of James Harriet and jumped towards the car and sailed into Mrs. Pumphrey's lap. वो जंप करके मिसेस पम्फ्री की गोद में जाके बैठ गया. Okay. She gave a startled, oh, she was surprised by this energetic behavior of the dog, and then had to defend herself as he swarmed over her. Now, dogs, after meeting their owner, after a long time, they get overly excited. So Tricky is also overly excited over here, and he jumped on Mrs. Pumphrey with such immense force that Mrs. Pumphrey has to defend herself because Tricky was all over her, licking her face, barking at her. During the excitement, I helped the chauffeur to bring out the beds, toys, cushions, coats, and bowls. Now, meanwhile, when Mrs. Pumphrey is caressing the dog, chauffeur was helped by the author to take back all the belongings of Tricky, which are the cushions, toys, bowls, and all. None of which had been used. He has not used any of them because he has applied his own methods. As the car moved away, Mrs. Pumphrey leaned out of the window. Tears shone in her eyes, her lips trembled. As the car moved, Mrs. Pumphrey looked out of the window and she is crying. Now these are the tears of joy. ये खुशी के आंसू हैं. She is happy because Tricky is extremely well. And she shouted, "Oh, Mr. Harriet, how can I ever thank you? This is a triumph of surgery." She's saying, I don't have words. In which words I should thank you? You have done this miracle, and this is really a triumph of surgery. Triumph means jeet. So this is a triumph of surgery. Means surgery means this method which was used by James Harriet to cure the dog. And literally, we all know that this is really triumph of surgery because a big, fat, energy-less dog has been transformed into a fit and fine animal. So this completes the explanation of the chapter. Please don't skip the video. Watch each and every part. This is a line by line explanation video. If you forward the video or miss any part, then what's the use of making the line by line explanation? Watch the complete video, subscribe my channel, like this video, and please mention in comments as to how you like this video. Till then, it's bye bye. Happy learning.